Intel took off like a rocket today. So this was on news. We hit record highs after a report came out that said Intel had reached preliminary chip-making agreement with Apple. It was up 14%. And we caught part of this on the way up, and we caught part of this on the way down. And I want to take a look at what the reasoning and logic was for both of those. So news comes out, and I mean, the news was very timely. So if you look at Reuters, the news was out here. And you know, the sad thing is you're going to have the symbol up in order to catch like news like this. And what you're not going to see is that immediate news. So where you're actually seeing the news is somewhere up inside this bar. And at that point, you got lots of decisions to make. What do we think is going to happen? It's in new territory. It's got lots of room up above. So how are we going to go and trap some of the profitability that's available on this thing? In the room, I said, let's look at Intel and figure out what some logical target areas are on the way higher. And one of the things I was looking at was the Bookmap. And if you don't have Bookmap yet, you can click the link below the video here to give it a try. And what you see here is the data that we were basing our decision on as the stock was moving higher. So it's ripping. It's just coming up through and, you know, making this move from about $9.55 when the news came out. It makes a move from $125 up to $130 per share. And somewhere in here is decision time. And as price was basing right up in here, about 127.50 up to 128, right, I said we've got a target at 130. And that target came from all of this overhead supply. So there were, on the Bookmap, there was 100,000 shares sitting there live, ready to go when we were trading 127.50. So I said to Julie and I said to you guys in the room, this is going to push higher probably, and it's going to stop somewhere. And when it stops, that's where we want to set our target. So just before the stopping point. And in this case, $130 per share. And as you can see, 130, there's now 85,000 shares back to sell again. Even so, we did 156,934 was done right up there when it reached the first time. Because of what we saw on the Bookmap, we anticipated a rotation back down again. And at that point, I said, let's look for a double header setup. What we got was sort of a loose double header up here. It didn't come down and actually retrace all the way into these lows, but we saw that this 126.73 level, the low of this second bar here. So you had this bar to the upside, this kings and queens double header setup, and then we came back down through 126.73. That was our entry. Where did we think it was going to go? So once again, we're looking at this and just trying to put together all the pieces of a puzzle. And what Julie latched on to was, we had this fib retracement down to 125.36 was going to be the 382. So from trough to peak, the retracement to 125.36 is a 382, and that's a very likely turning place in a big trend like this. Or you could shoot for the 50, which is 123.75. But if you were in the room, you know that what we were looking for was a move down, you know, maybe as low as 125, and then we were trailing at 125.28, I believe, or 125.30. What we were watching for was this move down into this liquidity right here. So as it gets into this 125, 125.30 area, right, we're anticipating that this is a likely place that's going to be support. When it comes down through it, and gets into 124.50, then we're like, oh, holy smokes, it might get down into 124. Always keeping an eye on this passive buy side liquidity over here. As price starts moving back up again, it moves through the trailing stop. And as you can see right now, we're probably making a move up into 128 again. So if you're really on your game, then if you got out at the 382 retracement and you reversed your position and got back in for the long side of the move, then right here about 126.73, the area that we went short on the move down, right? This was the big threshold level on the move lower. That move becomes the target. So 125.36 up to 126.73. And now 126.73 becomes a trailing stop as we move higher. And I think probably the next place for a logical target on this is going to be around 128 bucks. And again, that's based on, we've got 41,000 shares just sitting there. That's a big share size to sell. If it doesn't make it, we trail out on the move back down through our threshold level. And all of this, right, you can just sort of focus on and keep your attention on these pockets of liquidity that are being shown on the Bookmap. This is not going to show up on your level 2 data. It's not going to show up really much anywhere because this consolidated the current order book and the session volume by price book, these things are pulling data from everywhere, and it gives you an inside view of what's going on in the markets. All right, so I hope that helps a little bit with what we were doing in the room there and clears up any confusion anyone might have about where these levels were coming from. I did have the Bookmap up while we were doing this trade. And again, like I said, if you're watching this in the replay video, you can click on the link and you can give Bookmap a try for yourself. So if you use that link to buy it, or you use that link to subscribe to Bookmap, then we've also got some education that we're going to be doing about Bookmap that will sort of give you our bird's eye view of how we approach this and how we use this really great tool in our trading.